Okay, now let's continue with the inequalities, but this time we are going to deal with absolute values. So let me explain you what absolute value is. So the absolute value of a number is the distance between 0 and that number. For example, the absolute value of minus 7 is 7 because the distance between minus 7 and 0 is 7. And let's say that the absolute value of 3 equals to 3. Why? Because 3, the distance between 3 and 0 is 3. Now let's say that the absolute value of x minus 5 equals to 4. This means that the distance between 0 and x minus 5 must be equal to 4. Therefore, x minus 5 can be either minus 4 or x minus 5 is equal to 4. Because the distance between x minus 5 and 0 must be 4. So therefore, from this case, we see that x equals to 1. And from here, we see that x equals to 9. Therefore, here we have two solutions. X can be either 1 or 9. Now let's continue with an inequality. Here, absolute value of x minus 1 is less than 3. So what does that mean? That means that the distance between 0 and x minus 1 must be lower than 3. So I can say x minus 1 must be lower than 3. Also, x minus 1 must be greater than minus 3. Why does x minus 1 have to be greater than minus 3? Because the distance between 0 and minus 3 is 3, and if x minus 1 is lower than minus 3, that means the distance between x minus 1 and 0 will be larger than 3. The example tells us that the absolute value of x minus 1 is lower than 3. Therefore, x minus 1 must be also greater than minus 3. So from these two conditions, we see that minus 3 is lower than x minus 1, which is lower than 3. So I add 1 to all sides of this inequality and I get minus 2 is lower than x, which is lower than 4. So x can be any value from minus 2 up to 4. Now let's give one more example for inequalities, which is x plus 2, the absolute value of x plus 2, which is the distance between 0 and x plus 2 greater than 5. So what does that mean? That means x plus 2 must be greater than 5, or x plus 2 can be lower than minus 5, because the distance between 0 and minus 5 is 5, and if x plus 2 is lower than minus 5, then the distance between 0 and x plus 2 will be larger than 5. And this is what the example tells us to do. So from here, we see that x is higher than 3. And from here, we see that x is lower than minus 7. So x can be any value from minus infinity up to minus 7, unified with 3 up to infinity. Now let's solve a question in order to understand this topic better. So the question says, how many integer values can x take if the absolute value of 3x plus 5 is less than x plus 7? So immediately we see that x plus 7 must be greater than 0, because absolute value always gives you a non-negative number, because the distance between a number and 0 is always non-negative. So here I will say that 3x plus 5 is less than x plus 7, but also 3x plus 5 is greater than minus x plus 7. Because if 3x plus 5 is less than minus x plus 7, then the distance between 3x plus 5 and 0 will be greater than x plus 7. The question says that the distance between 3x plus 5 and 0 must be less than x plus 7. So I will write this inequality one more time. 3x plus 5 is lower than x plus 7 and greater than minus x minus 7. Now we have two cases. The first case is here and the second case is this one. First, let's solve this one. Minus x minus 7 is less than 3x plus 5. So I will pass minus x to the right hand side of the inequality and 5 to the left hand side of the inequality. I will have 4x is greater than minus 12. I will divide both sides of the inequality by 4 and I will get x greater than minus 3. Now let's solve this condition, this case. So 3x plus 5 is less than x plus 7. I will pass x to the left hand side of the inequality and 5 to the right hand side of the inequality. I will have 2x lower than 2 and I will divide both sides by 2. I will get x lower than 1. So x must satisfy both of these cases. Therefore, I can write minus 3 is less than x, that comes from here, and x lower than 1, that comes from here. So the solution interval of our question is x can be any value from minus 3 up to 1. So the integer values x can take are minus 2, minus 1, and 0. So there are 3 integers, which means that the answer of our question is 3.